I think that social finance or social impact finance is a great opportunity to transform society and meet social needs. We are witnessing a radical evolution in the way finance approaches investments and enterprises. And I can see a radical approach that is based on intentionality, measurability, and additionality, that in my view are the three main important features to define impact investing, and are the only three features that ensure that impact investing is actually meeting the transformational needs and objectives that it's given.
Mario, can I ask you about that a little bit more in terms of specifically social needs? One of the big pressing issues that we're experiencing as a society is this idea of a fourth industrial revolution and the whole idea of an intangible economy. And I remember you talking a while ago about what impact investing meant in that context. And
yeah, I think that we need to come to terms with the fact that the knowledge economy and the way the financial industry approached the knowledge economy was a bit disappointing. I think that, cutting a very long story short, that there has been underinvestment in intangible, not only in knowledge or high-level intangible, but also in so-called social intangible and social capital. I think impact investing is a huge opportunity for the financial industry to invest in the intangible economy and to adapt to what it is really happening in real economy, that is, that intangible is the crucial asset. So I think that impact investing will be successful if it will be able to put intangible investment and social investment at the very center of the stage. As I said, I think that investing in the intangible economy and the impact economy is a crucial issue for rethinking society and then solving social problems. But of course, at the center of the stage, the crucial thing that is still a matter of unfinished business is the measurement issue, impact measurement issue. So I think Karl is the right person to ask about that.
Thank you, Mario. That's really a big challenge. I mean, one of the interesting journeys of exploration that I went on recently was working with the United Nations Development Programme. And you've got an organization that has been working specifically to create positive impact for decades and has got very, very refined ways of measuring the effectiveness of deploying capital in that context. And on the other hand, you've got the private sector and social enterprises and maybe a whole different group of organizations talking about impact management in a different way, talking about effectiveness, talking about how stakeholders experience outcomes and the relevance and importance for them. And it realized that actually people were potentially, it seemed like people were talking about almost totally different things. And in investigating that a little bit more, what we found was actually there is a convergence around a few things. And what we found was when you peeled away how people describe the process, although they were using different words often, it ultimately ended up being a very similar process, almost the same process, and you can map it to the Deming quality management cycle. And that I thought was really interesting because it means that you have a way to take the impact management process and integrate it into the core processes of almost any business, and so therefore it can really be an extension of that core mission and the core aims and purpose of an organization, and less intimidating because it's not this foreign thing from the outside. And the other crucial aspect that became apparent in that mega mapping exercise was the differentiation between how people interpreted what impact is and how that translates into how they want to manage and measure it. And you've got everything from a very light touch approach maybe on the side, which might be something we more often observe in mainstream finance, where it might be looking at how do we screen out the negatives, how do we avoid doing harm, how do we then maybe ramp up the intensity towards targeting responsible investments and responsible companies, all the way to what I refer to as the impact enthusiasts, the people who really focus on that as the primary objective, and saying it's not just a matter of what we. Your point about intentionality and measurability is absolutely right, but it goes beyond that as well. It's about saying, what about the unintended consequences, and how do we also think about that, and the effects on the stakeholders who are outside that initial orbit, and by orientating it on that spectrum, you end up with giving people a way to codify their position that's appropriate to their, let's say, institutional mandate.
Exactly. And let me stress 2 points about what Karl said. The first one is the importance of giving the right things the right names, because my fear is that if we end up that everything is impact, nothing is impact, and so we will completely miss the transformational power of the impact movement. The other thing is the broad scope with which you need to look at impact organizations, including social enterprises and for-profit enterprises, because of course we are in the very middle of a huge transformation, and my guess is that there is a new economic entity called the social venture that is a hybrid product between the DNA of social enterprises and the DNA of for-profit with purpose enterprises.
You spoke about the idea of the language being really important, and the potential for a dilution of the concept of impact. And I think in terms of the principle of that, I agree absolutely. And then there's something else which sits almost sort of at 90 degrees to that, and it's the idea that we have a social economy, which we give a name to, and people identify with it, and when we quantify it, I think in Europe we say roughly it's 5 or 10% of the economy, and then we have the mainstream economy. And it always worried me that we kind of we almost give license to the mainstream being, well, we don't really mean it to be an antisocial economy.
Absolutely.
But so alongside giving things names, I think we also need to think about how do we avoid accidentally creating ghettoization of things.
Exactly.
And there's a really exciting opportunity to use this as a moment of change to embed the idea of impact and what is effectively, let's say, a hotbed of innovation in the social economy and social enterprise, and say, how do we now mainstream this, and how do we get it to scale, and how do we use it as a way to as terms of reference for the whole economy? Yeah,
absolutely. I think this is the crucial issue, and we need to find a way for the social economy to get rid of this label of marginal lateral phenomenon. We need to get it into the mainstream. Of course, it's not an easy exercise, because we need to do that without losing the core values, the mission, the structural values of social entrepreneurship. But we're working on that.
Yes, as the European Commission, we definitely think is the case. We are channeling all our financial instruments at the moment through a number of what we call implementing partners, large banks like the European Investment Bank, for instance, or the European investment funds, and those could in turn use local financial intermediaries which know much better what is the local environment in which the social enterprises are operating. For us, like from Brussels, it's very difficult to be able to know and to cater for the needs of social enterprises which act and are born in a local environment which a commercial bank or which operates locally knows much better than us. So we give the main guidelines for investment, but then it's definitely in the hands very much of financial intermediaries at the moment. We use a definition of social enterprises when it comes to all our financing regulation and our financing programs. One example is, for instance, the EASY program, Employment and Social Innovation Program that the DG Employment of the European Commission is carrying out in this programming period. And this is targeted to a specific a specific typology of enterprise which has some restriction, for instance, when it comes to the distribution of dividends or profits. I think at this very moment in time we are in a macroeconomic outlook which is much better than a few years ago, and the social impact investing is capturing a lot of interest from investors which want to invest part of the liquidity there is in the market in new ways of doing finance. From this point of view, we see from a policy perspective an increasing interest in this sort of activity, and we are looking forward to do something for social impact investing with the new InvestEU program, which will be operational as from 2021 once the new programming period is set in motion.